Most people think success begins with a great idea, but that is not true. Ideas are everywhere, in notebooks, in conversations, in voice notes, in late-night thoughts, in the minds of people who know exactly what they could build, but never actually build it. That is the strange thing about potential. Potential can be real and still remain unused. A person can be intelligent, ambitious, creative, capable, full of ideas, and still stay stuck. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack vision, not because they lack information, but because they never developed the skill that turns ideas into reality. Execution. Execution is what separates the person who talks about building from the person who actually builds. It is the bridge between imagination and reality, between intention and outcome, between the life you keep thinking about and the life you are actually creating. Most people never cross that bridge. They stand at the edge of it, thinking, planning, researching, waiting, telling themselves they are preparing. But preparation can become a hiding place. Learning can become a hiding place. Planning can become a hiding place. Perfecting the idea can become a hiding place. Waiting until you feel ready can become a hiding place. And the dangerous part is, it does not look like fear. It looks responsible. It looks thoughtful. It looks strategic. It looks like you are doing the right thing. But sometimes, what you call preparation is really avoidance wearing intelligent clothing. That is why so many people confuse motion with progress. They watch another video, read another book, save another quote, open another document, build another plan, and all of it feels productive. But nothing has moved. No offer was made. No product was created. No conversation was started. No page was published. No uncomfortable action was taken. The idea stayed safe. And because it stayed safe, it stayed imaginary. That is what execution does. Execution exposes the idea to reality. And reality is uncomfortable. Reality gives feedback. Reality reveals flaws. Reality invites judgment. Reality forces adjustment. That is why people avoid it. Not because they do not care, but because once you execute, the dream is no longer protected by imagination. It becomes measurable, visible, imperfect, real. And that is terrifying. Because as long as the idea remains in your mind, it can still feel perfect. But the moment you act, you have to meet the truth. Maybe the idea needs work. Maybe you need more skill. Maybe people do not respond. Maybe the first attempt fails. But that is not the end of building. That is the beginning of it. Builders understand something dreamers often resist. The first version is not supposed to be perfect. The first version is supposed to exist. Because once something exists, you can improve it. You can test it. You can shape it. You can learn from it. But you cannot improve an idea that never leaves your head. That is why execution is not a personality trait. It is not something some people are magically born with. Execution is a trained behavior, a practiced behavior, a repeated behavior. You become someone who executes by executing. Not perfectly, not confidently, not without fear, but consistently enough that action becomes part of who you are. There is a cycle many people never realize they are trapped inside. It feels productive. It feels intelligent. It feels safe. But it keeps them from building. Think. Research. Plan. Doubt. Research more. Quit. That is the dreamer's cycle, and it usually begins with excitement. A person gets an idea. They feel a spark. They imagine what it could become. They see the future clearly for a moment, and that feeling is powerful. So they start thinking, then researching, then watching videos, then studying people who already did it, then comparing themselves to people much further ahead. And slowly, the idea that once felt exciting starts feeling heavy. Because the more they research, the more they discover what they don't know. The more they compare, the more behind they feel. The more they plan, the more complicated everything becomes. Then doubt enters. What if this doesn't work? What if people judge me? What if I'm not ready? What if someone else already did it better? What if I fail? And once doubt enters, the mind looks for safety. So it does what feels responsible. It researches more. Another video, another course, another outline, another strategy, another reason to delay the first uncomfortable action. And eventually, the energy disappears. The idea fades. The document stays unfinished. The project stays private. The person moves on. Not because the idea was worthless, but because the idea was never trained through execution. It stayed inside the mind where nothing could test it. Nothing could shape it. Nothing could strengthen it. That is the danger of the dreamer's cycle. It gives you the feeling of progress without the risk of reality. You feel like you are moving because your mind is active. But your life is not changing because your behavior has not changed. And this is where many intelligent people get trapped. They are smart enough to see all the problems, smart enough to imagine all the risks, smart enough to know how much they don't know. But sometimes intelligence becomes another form of hesitation, because the mind can always find one more reason not to begin. One more flaw, one more missing skill, one more person to compare yourself to, one more thing to fix before you start. But building does not reward endless preparation. Building rewards contact with reality. At some point, the idea must leave your head. It must become a conversation, a draft, a page, a product, a post, a first attempt. something real enough to be judged, real enough to be improved, real enough to teach you. That is what the dreamer's cycle avoids. It avoids the moment where imagination becomes evidence, because evidence can disappoint you. But evidence can also develop you. And without evidence, there is no growth. The dreamer protects the idea from reality. The builder exposes the idea to reality. That is the difference. Builders are not free from doubt. They are not free from fear. They are not free from uncertainty. They simply have a different cycle. Think, decide, act, reflect, improve, repeat. That is the builder's cycle. It begins the same way the dreamer's cycle begins, with thought. A builder thinks. A builder studies. A builder asks questions. A builder pays attention. But then comes the difference. The builder decides, not because they know everything, not because they feel completely ready, not because the risk has disappeared, but because they understand that thinking must eventually become movement. A decision draws a line. It says, we are no longer staying here. Then comes action, usually imperfect action, usually uncomfortable action, usually smaller than the dream in their mind. But action does something imagination cannot do. Action creates contact with reality. It gives the builder evidence. What worked? What failed? What people ignored? What people responded to? What needs to change? That evidence becomes reflection, and reflection turns experience into wisdom. Without reflection, action becomes chaos. But without action, reflection has nothing real to study. That is why execution is not mindless movement. It is intelligent movement. The builder acts, then pays attention, then adjusts, then improves, then acts again. This is how skill is built. Not through one perfect decision, but through repeated contact with reality. A business improves this way. A body improves this way. A craft improves this way. A relationship improves this way. A life improves this way. You do something real. You learn from what happens. You correct. You repeat. And slowly, your execution becomes sharper. Your judgment becomes clearer. Your confidence becomes earned. This is the part most people miss. Confidence is not the starting point. Confidence is the result. It comes after evidence, after attempts, after mistakes, after proving to yourself that you can move even when you are uncertain. That is why execution must be trained. You train it by finishing small things, by publishing before it feels perfect, by starting the conversation, by making the offer, by taking the next visible step. Not the entire staircase, just the next step. Because execution does not require you to see the whole path. It requires you to stop standing still. And every time you act, reflect, improve, and repeat, you are not just building the project, you are building the person capable of finishing it. Before you build a business, before you build a career, before you build a body, before you build a meaningful life, you must build someone who executes. Because every external result depends on an internal behavior. The ability to decide, the ability to begin, the ability to move before you feel ready, the ability to learn from reality instead of hiding inside imagination. That is what builders understand. They do not wait for perfect ideas. They do not wait for perfect timing. They do not wait for perfect confidence. They build through imperfection. They improve through contact. They become capable through execution. And maybe that is the truth most people avoid. The life you want will not be built by the version of you that only thinks about changing. It will be built by the version of you that learns to act. One decision, one uncomfortable step, one finished task, one honest reflection, one improvement, one repetition. That is how anything meaningful is built. Not all at once, not perfectly, not without fear, but consistently enough that execution becomes part of your identity. Because in the end, the people who build different lives are not always the people with better ideas. They are the people who trained themselves to turn ideas into action.